Chapter 10. Assignments and Occupational Codes. Section 10A. Eligibility and Restrictions. 10.1. Assignment Eligibility and Restrictions. The Air Force classifies and assigns airmen worldwide equitably to ensure a high state of readiness to accomplish the mission. The Air Force uses a coherent and logical classification system to identify valid manpower requirements, to identify and describe each Air Force occupational specialty, to ensure minimum prerequisite standards are set for each specialty, and to ensure qualified airmen are placed into each specialty. The Air Force also recognizes the importance of special assignment considerations for airmen with exceptional needs. To the maximum extent possible, the Air Force assigns a permanent change of station, PCS, to airmen on a voluntary basis. When required, the Air Force equitably distributes involuntary assignments along similarly qualified airmen to minimize family separation or allow airmen to tend to essential military and personal responsibilities. Air Force Reserve assignment may be full-time or part-time and are all voluntary, thus new assignments must be applied for, particularly when pursuing promotion opportunities. 10.2. Assignment Authority. Airmen assignments are filled to meet the overall needs of the Air Force according to law, Department of Defense, and instructional guidance. The Department of Defense allocates funds, delegates authority, and directs policies for the PCS assignments of airmen to satisfy national security requirements. The Director of Assignments, or equivalent, in coordination with major commands, field operating agencies, and direct reporting units, is authorized to initiate assignments for airmen to fill valid vacant manpower authorizations. The Air Force Personnel Center is the final approval authority for assignments in the grades of Senior Master Sergeant and below. The Air Force Executive Talent Management Office is the final approval authority for Chief Master Sergeant and Chief Master Sergeant Select assignments. AFI 36-2110 assignments is the governing instruction for operational, including rotational, training, including formal education and professional military education, and force structure assignments. 10.3. Assignment Cancellations. Once an airman is selected for a PCS and orders are published, assignments are not normally canceled within 60 days of the projected departure date unless the airman cannot be effectively used at the projected location. If the airman indicates an assignment cancellation will cause hardship, the airman will be asked to prepare a written statement to be coordinated through the unit commander to the Military Personnel Section. Upon receipt, the Military Personnel Section advises the assignment office of primary responsibility to either consider reinstatement of the original assignment, provide an alternate assignment, or confirm cancellation with reasons why the airman is required to remain at the present base. 10.4. Factors for distribution of personnel. While the primary factor in selecting airmen for a PCS is the airman's qualifications to fill a valid manpower requirement and perform productively in the position, many additional aspects may be considered for eligibility criteria as well. Special Experience Identifier. The Special Experience Identifier system complements the assignment process and is used in conjunction with grade, Air Force Specialty Code, AFSC, and AFSC prefixes and suffixes to match uniquely qualified airmen to jobs with special requirements. Special experience identifiers may be used when specific experience or training is critical and no other means is appropriate or available. Manpower positions are coded with a special experience identifier to identify positions that require or provide unique experiences or qualifications. The personnel records for airmen who earn a special experience identifier are similarly coded to rapidly identify airmen to meet unique circumstances, contingency requirements, or other critical needs. Security Access Requirement. Some positions require airmen to have access to a specified level of classified information. However, sometimes the urgency to fill a position does not allow selection of airmen using PCS eligibility criteria, subsequent processing, or investigation for access at the specified level. Under these circumstances, selection may be necessary from among airmen who currently have access or can be granted access immediately. Grade, Air Force Specialty Code, and skill level relationship for assignment. Normally, airmen in the grade of Senior Master Sergeant and below are selected for assignment in their Control AFSC based on their grade and skill level. Airmen with an incompatible grade and Control AFSC skill level due to retraining or reclassification are selected for assignment and allocated against requirements commensurate with their grade, regardless of their Control AFSC skill level. Chief Master Sergeants and Chief Master Sergeant Selects may be assigned in any AFSC or Chief Enlisted Manager code they possess or are qualified to be awarded. Primarily, Chief Master Sergeants fill Chief Enlisted Manager code positions. Senior Master Sergeants fill 9 skill level positions. Master Sergeants and Technical Sergeants fill 7 skill level positions. Staff Sergeants and Senior Airmen fill 5 skill level positions, and Airman First Class, Airman, and Airman Basic fill 3 skill level positions. Volunteer status and assignment eligibility. Within a group of qualified airmen who meet the minimum eligibility criteria for PCS selection, volunteers are selected ahead of non-volunteers. Qualified volunteers should be considered for all assignments. Volunteers who have not met time on station requirements may be considered before qualified non-volunteers who have met time on station requirements, but such a qualified volunteer requires a time on station waiver. A qualified volunteer who meets the minimum time on station requirement is considered first, based on the order of longest on station. Note: first-term airmen serving an initial enlistment of 4 or more years may not be given more than 2 assignments in different locations following initial basic and skill training during their first 4 years of service, regardless of tour length. First-term airmen who make 2 PCS moves are permitted an additional PCS in conjunction with an improved humanitarian reassignment, a joint spouse assignment, as a volunteer, or when the PCS is a mandatory move. Low-cost moves are excluded from the 2-move count. Base of preference, enlisted only. The first-term airman and career airmen may request a base of preference assignment as an incentive for continued Air Force service. First-term airmen, in conjunction with reenlistment or retraining, may request a PCS from Continental United States, CONUS, to CONUS or PCS from overseas to CONUS. Also, first-term airmen in CONUS may request a base of preference to remain in place. Career airmen may request a base of preference to remain in place at a CONUS location or PCS to a base of preference for CONUS to CONUS assignment. A PCS base of preference is not authorized from CONUS to overseas or overseas to overseas. An in-place base of preference is not authorized for airmen assigned overseas. Assignment of military couples, joint spouse. Each airman of a military couple serves in his or her own right. Military couples must fulfill the obligations inherent to all airmen. They are considered for assignments to fill valid manning requirements and must perform duties that require the skills in which they are trained. Provided these criteria are met, military couples may be considered for assignments where they can maintain a joint residence. Military couples should not make decisions on future service, career development, or family planning based on the assumption they will always be assigned to the same location or that joint spouse assignment is guaranteed. Home basing and follow-on assignment programs. The purpose of the home basing and follow-on assignment programs is to reduce PCS costs, reduce PCS turbulence, and increase stability for airmen and their families by providing advance assignment consideration. The Servicing Military Personnel section must brief all eligible airmen selected for or electing to serve an unaccompanied overseas tour of 15 months or less on these programs. Airmen must either apply or decline to apply for these programs in writing. Assignment of family members. Assignment of family members to the same duty location or unit is not prohibited. However, family members will not be assigned where one family member will or may hold a command or supervisory position over another family member. Such assignments result in or may create a perception of preferential treatment or loss of impartiality, thereby compromising the integrity of command and supervisory functions. Voluntary Stabilized Base Assignment Program, enlisted only. The Voluntary Stabilized Base Assignment Program provides airmen a stabilized tour in exchange for volunteering for an assignment to a historically hard-to-find location. Extended long overseas tour length. The Extended Long Overseas Tour Volunteer Program applies to airmen who volunteer for a PCS overseas to a long tour location. Accompanied tour length is 24 months or more, and unaccompanied tour length is more than 15 months. Airmen who volunteer for an extended long overseas tour agree to serve the standard tour length plus an additional 12 months. The 12-month extended tour period is in addition to the normal, accompanied, or unaccompanied long tour length. A change in status affects the service retainability that must be obtained and the tour length the airman will be required to serve. The requirement for additional service retainability may, for an airman, to extend or reenlist and could affect selective reenlistment bonus calculation. Extended long overseas tour volunteers are considered ahead of standard overseas tour volunteers, according to established Air Force priorities. Temporary duty. The maximum temporary duty period at any one location in a 12-month period is 180 days, unless the Secretary of the Air Force grants a waiver. To the degree possible, airmen are not selected for involuntary overseas assignment while performing certain kinds of temporary duty. If selected, the report no later than date will not be within 120 days of the temporary duty completion date. 10.5. Service retainability. Upon selection for assignment, an airman must have or be able to obtain certain minimum periods of obligated service depending on the type of PCS move. This committed service retainability ensures an airman has a period of regular Air Force status remaining long enough to offset the costs associated with a PCS. Airmen who do not have retainability may decline to obtain retainability or, if eligible, may retire instead of accepting a PCS. Declining to obtain retainability will affect a career airman by making him or her ineligible for promotion and reenlistment. Consecutive overseas tour. If an airman is serving overseas and is a volunteer for a consecutive overseas tour or in-place consecutive overseas tour, the airman must complete the full prescribed tour at the current location and the full prescribed overseas tour at the new location or another full tour in place. Dependent accompanied overseas. Airmen who are eligible and desire that their dependents accompany them at government expense during an overseas tours must serve the accompanied by dependents overseas tour length. This tour is normally longer than the unaccompanied tour. Electing to serve the longer accompanied tour requires the airman to obtain the obligated service retainability for the longer tour. Airmen who are either ineligible or decline to obtain the service retainability for the accompanied tour length will not receive approval for dependent travel at the government's expense or command sponsorship. Overseas to continental United States. Reassignment to overseas to CONUS requires an airman, in most cases, to have or obtain at least 12 months of obligated service retainability. Those airmen serving overseas who fail to obtain the necessary retainability for reassignment to the CONUS will be retained in the overseas area until their date of separation. Continental United States to continental United States. The service retainability requirement for a CONUS to CONUS PCS is 24 months regardless of career status. 10.6. Time on station requirements. Minimum time on station requirements exist to provide continuity to an organization and reasonable periods of stable family life for airmen. For most PCS moves within the CONUS, first-term airmen and career airmen must have at least 48 months of time on station, with the exception of first-term airmen applying eligible for the First-Term Airman Base of Preference program. First-term airmen must have at least 12 months of time on station to go from CONUS to overseas. Career airmen require 24 months of time on station before an overseas PCS. 10.7. Enlisted Quarterly Assignments Listing. The Enlisted Quarterly Assignment Listing, provides airmen a listing of the assignment requirements available for upcoming assignment cycles and allows them the opportunity to align personal preferences to actual Air Force needs. The listing identifies what assignments, by AFSC and grade, are available at particular locations. Plus is used to advertise requirements for special duty, joint and departmental, short notice overseas, and all Chief Master Sergeant assignments. Equal Plus shows upcoming requirements, special qualifications needed, available locations, reporting instructions, and points of contact for additional information. Note: each airman is individually responsible for the currency and accuracy of assignment preferences. When a change in preference or status occurs, career progression or marriage, airman assignment preferences should be updated accordingly. 10.8 Chief Master Sergeant Development. The Chiefs Group uses Chief Master Sergeant assignment policies to support the continued development of Chief Master Sergeants. Although these assignment policies are comparable with other senior leader assignments and development methods, they are managed differently than other enlisted grades. Additional information can be found on the Air Force portal, the Senior Leader Career Management System Guide, and the Chief Master Sergeant Information Handbook. 10.9 Deferments. Deferments may be authorized in most grades and AFSCs to maintain an equitable assignment system and also support the need for stability in certain organizations or functions. Deferments are normally approved to preclude an airman's PCS while suitability to remain on regular Air Force status is evaluated or during a period of observation or rehabilitation. Deferments also exist for such things as completion of an educational program or degree, witness for a court-martial, accused in a court-martial, control roster, Article 15 punishment, base of preference program, retraining, or humanitarian reasons. Humanitarian reassignment or deferment. Humanitarian reassignment or deferments help airmen resolve severe short-term problems involving a family member. The problem must be resolvable within a reasonable period of time, normally 12 months. The airman's presence must be considered absolutely essential to resolve the problem, and the airman must be effectively utilized in his or her control AFSC at the new assignment. Family members under the humanitarian program are limited to spouse, children, parents, parents-in-law, and those people who have served in loco parentis. A person in loco parentis refers to someone who has exercised parental rights and responsibilities in place of a natural parent for at least 5 years before the airman's or spouse's 21st birthday, or before the airman's entry into the regular Air Force, whichever is earlier. While brothers and sisters are not included in the definition of family member for humanitarian consideration, a request involving a brother's or sister's terminal illness will be considered as an exception to policy. Exceptional Family Member Program Reassignment or Deferment. The Exceptional Family Member Program, EFMP, is based on an airman's need for special medical or educational care for a spouse or child that is required long-term or permanent. This program is not a base of choice program. Assignment decisions are based on manning needs of the Air Force at locations where the special medical or educational needs for a spouse or child can be met. The Air Force's commitment and responsibilities under the EFMP requires mandatory enrollment and identification of exceptional family members. Under the EFMP, an airman may receive a reassignment if a need arises for specialized care that cannot be met where currently assigned. A deferment from an assignment may be provided for a newly identified condition if the airman's presence is considered essential. The purpose of such a deferment is to allow the airman time to establish a special medical treatment program or an educational program for the exceptional family member. When granted, the initial period of deferment is usually 12 months, after which an airman may be reconsidered for a PCS if otherwise eligible. Education deferment. Airmen who have not yet been selected for a PCS may request deferment from assignment selection when they have nearly completed a vocational program or college degree requirements. High School Senior Assignment Deferment Program. Senior Master Sergeants and below, and officers up through Lieutenant Colonel may apply for a 1-year assignment deferment to accommodate dependent graduations from high school. Back-to-back deferments may be possible, and military married to military spouses may also apply. As in all situations, however, the needs of the Air Force will come first and will be the determining factor in granting deferments. Requests will be considered on a case-by-case basis, and deferments will be approved where possible. Dependent care and adoption deferment. All airmen ensure dependent care arrangements are made in the event of temporary duty or PCS. Military couples with dependents and single airman sponsors are expected to fulfill their military obligations on the same basis as other airmen. They are eligible for worldwide duty and all assignments for which they qualify. To ensure all airmen remain available for worldwide duty, they must have workable plans to provide parent-like care for the dependents as outlined in AFI 36-2908, Family Care Plans. Airmen who cannot or will not meet military commitments due to family needs will be considered for discharge. Airmen adopting children are given a limited time to complete the official adoption process and facilitate bonding. Airmen may be authorized deferment during the 6-month period following the date a child is officially placed in the airman's home. Airmen may also be authorized up to 21 days of permissive temporary duty to be used in conjunction with ordinary leave. 10.10 Expedited Transfers. Expedited transfers apply only to regular Air Force members who are sexually assaulted and file an unrestricted report. The airman may request an expedited transfer with assistance from the Sexual Assault Prevention and Response Office. If an airman is the victim of stalking or other sexual misconduct and files a report, the airman may also request an expedited transfer with assistance from the Victim and Witness Assistance Program in the installation's legal office. The Vice Wing Commander may apply on behalf of the alleged offender. To enhance protection for the sexual assault victim, potential reassignment of the alleged offender shall be considered by the Vice Wing Commander or equivalent, balancing interests of the sexual assault victim and the alleged offender. An airman, victim, or alleged offender will generally only be delayed from departing for a PCS when they are required to remain for completion of a criminal or disciplinary investigation or action in which they are the subject. All assignment action codes must be removed from the airman's personnel file to facilitate PCS eligibility. Retraining or cross-flow actions will be considered under this program on a case-by-case basis, as the goal for transferring the airman is to process a timely reassignment with the minimal disruption to an airman's career and family.